Welcome back to PuckPod, episode 82. It's been a long while, guys. I actually don't remember exactly how long it's been, but let's go around the room. First off, I'm Christian Shanidi. That's David Leo, Brandon Brown, Aiden Calling McDonald, Brian Wong there at the bottom. How you guys been doing?
Pretty good. Yeah. As if you're a returning viewer to the Puck Pod, you know that me, Christian, Aiden, Brandon are all in the same school program. We just wrapped up our second semester, and I don't want to leave Brian out here, but Brian is going to be heading back to law school in what, next week, Brian?
Yeah, go back next
Yeah,
week.
man.
Um, like I also went to we also went to a Jays game together, which is pretty cool this past week. And what else did we do? Well, I guess we're doing this now, but
Dude, if we
You've
have
been
to
on the
recap like
grind.
if we have to
Yeah,
recap over a month of stuff, it's gonna we're
no,
gonna be here
yeah,
all day,
yeah.
yeah,
all day.
no. We don't even have time to recap like everything that's happened in the NHL. We're gonna keep it to a couple topics today, mainly just the things that have happened very, very recently. Before I get there, Aiden, Brando, anything you guys want to say? How long it's been? Does it feel good to be back?
Yeah, feels great. We got absolutely dunked on with assignments the last couple months. But we all pushed through. So have a bit of time off. Yeah, it's been hard, but it's been rewarding. Like the last month and a bit of our program.
Yeah,
Brando,
Aiden's
you've
right. I
probably been the
think.
most busy. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's been a great summer, but it's been really busy, and I think now that we're getting to the end, it's just been a kind of a whirlwind. It's crazy how fast it always goes, but looking forward to the fall and everything else that's coming with all of us. So.
Same here, same here. Okay, let's get to the hockey. The topics we'll be covering today are a couple of offer sheets, a Patrik Laine trade, and a trade or an ask for a trade out of Nashville. We're going to start with those offer sheets, though. Buckle up, boys. This is going to be a lot of information, and it'll help explain why I'm wearing the St. Louis Blues hat. This is literally the first time I've worn this hat. I've maybe owned it for a year and a half. But yeah, the St. Louis Blues offer sheeted to Edmonton Oilers, and they are now St. Louis Blues. Let's go over how we got there. Starting on August 13th, when the Blues made a trade with the Pittsburgh Penguins, acquiring a 2025 second and 2026 fifth in exchange for a 2026 second and 2025 third. That's confusing stuff. Basically, what happened there is St. Louis had to reacquire their own pick in order to make an offer sheet. So, yeah, that trade happened, or that pick ended up in Pittsburgh like a month earlier in a Kevin Hayes deal. St. Louis had to backtrack and go get that pick back. So after doing that, they then proceeded to offer sheet to Edmonton Oilers. At forward, Dylan Holloway, they offer sheeted him on a 2-year deal worth just over 2.25 per year. And on defense, Philip Broberg, a 2-year deal as well, just over 4.5 per though. Fast forward a couple days, August 18th, we get a trade from Edmonton sending Cody Ceci to Alcatraz. I'm sorry, I mean San Jose. They sent him to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for Ty Emberson. Yeah, that was it. So it was Cody Ceci and a third for Ty Emberson, making some space, having people wondering, okay, are they going to match these two offer sheets? Because they did have the ability after that trade to do so. But they then made another trade first, getting Vasily Podkolzin from the Vancouver Canucks for just a fourth. And we found out just yesterday, no, the Edmonton Oilers did not match. Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg are now St. Louis Blues. A lot to go over there, guys. Take it wherever you want. There's a ton to talk about here.
Dave, earlier this season, you said that you wanted to see more offer sheets. You thought that it would be a cheap way to acquire a player and hurt another team essentially. I made the argument to you that you would burn a bridge doing such actions. You got your wish. You actually got two of it. So
So I think, yeah, like, so when I said that, I think I was just kind of like I'm still kind of burnt about like all the I believe that was when we heard like it popped up a lot during the Mitch Marner negotiations. I'm pretty sure that was like the first time where it was like a legitimate threat. People were like, "Oh, Mitch Marner, he's gonna
He's
get
going to
offer sheeted."
Columbus.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah, yeah.
God.
So the thought behind it is what it costs right now for like what the picks in return. One was a second, the other one was the third, right? Like
Yep.
two picks off the
Yep.
board. dude.
They also,
Like
and they sent like a
$4 million.
thank you card to Edmonton, a 3rd-round pick as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so like $4 million for a 2nd-round pick. Is that like not what the going rate is? It's probably under what the going rate is right now for that. And you also acquire somebody like who's I think Philip Broberg's got like a lot of upside. He was pushed down the lineup. He wasn't a regular starter on that Edmonton Oilers blue line, but he showed in the playoffs that when he does come in, he can be a factor. And I think on a team like St. Louis, who's kind of building on the fly right now, those are the types of guys that they need to take chances on. So honestly, it's like I think we're coming into a new age of the NHL. We're starting to move away from the old boys club, hiring your former goaltender who played 15 years for you as your general manager. And for lack of a better term, people like that, they make dumb hockey moves, right? But now we're starting to see more of the analytics side kind of coming through. And while Doug Armstrong has been around for 10 years, I believe he also played in the NHL. So I'm kind of contradicting myself with that comment, but he is a smart GM. We're starting to see a lot less stupid GMs in the league and a lot more smarter GMs, people that are willing to take risks and honestly willing to burn a bridge. If you're burning one bridge, but you're also getting a great player out of it, like you still have 30 other bridges to cross. Like, I don't know. It always seemed stupid to me why we kind of moved away from that idea.
And analytics aside, Broberg, I believe, was a top 10 pick overall, and Holloway, I believe, was a top 25 pick overall. And they essentially got these players for a 2nd and a 3rd. I mean, that's pretty good value there, I'd say.
Yeah, I really like Holloway. And he's only 22, and he just played the Stanley Cup final. Like, that's great experience for such a young guy like that. Yeah, because like I feel like for a couple of years now, I haven't really known what St. Louis's plan is, like how they're gonna develop or kind of like retool. I think bringing in these two guys is a great step. So I thought I mean, took a lot of moves to get it done, but I like bringing in Broberg and Holloway.
Yeah, I would have to agree, guys. I think it's a smart move, like Dave said, for St. Louis to try to bring in some additional younger pieces to go alongside what we expect to be some pretty good draft choices over the next couple of years. I don't know if we expect St. Louis to be too much into the playoff fold, but it gives them a chance to kind of retool as opposed to rebuild. And these short-term deals don't really string them along too long, or don't string them along too much, so they are able to kind of revisit them as well and get them locked up long term. If especially Broberg, if he pops off and starts to show some of his potential, like people go back and forth on his playoff performance with the Oilers, but there really is a potential for him to move into a top 4 spot with the Blues over the next couple of years. So it's a good long-term bet. It's in the short term, maybe we'll see how it goes, giving up the picks as well as the potential of, like Brian said, burning a bridge. I know Ken Holland isn't there anymore, so maybe that's something that helped Doug Armstrong make this decision. But we'll see how it affects their trading performance and how they deal with some of the other teams in the league as we move forward.
Doug Armstrong did have a presser after the offer sheets, and he kind of addressed that question. Someone came to him and was like, hey, some people think that because Ken Holland's not in Edmonton anymore, you were more willing to make that kind of move. And I don't know if you guys saw his response, but it was basically like, I would have made these offer sheets if my mother was the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. That's a great line for sure. Can't go wrong with that one.
Sorry, Ma.
With the St. Louis. Yeah, sorry, Ma. Nobody go and hire Doug Armstrong's mom as a GM or you will regret your decision. But we'll stick with the St. Louis Blues here. I'm a big Philip Broberg fan as well. However, with that being said, like $4.5 million is definitely an overpay for what he's giving you, I think, for the next 2 years. Dylan Holloway, not as much. 2.2 isn't crazy over what you'd expect him to make. I think we got reports that they were both offered around 1.1 million by the Oilers in contract negotiations. So making like 5 times fold that in Philip Broberg's case, can't go wrong if you're him. But really for the Blues, as much as they are overpays, they can afford to do that because, like you guys mentioned, I don't expect the St. Louis Blues to be contending this year. They're kind of in the wilderness. I still don't really know what they're doing. They have some young pieces that I like Jake Neighbors, now Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, Dalibor Dvorsky, they drafted last year, and Otto Stenberg this year. So they have young names they have that draft pedigree. But still looking at their roster, it's kind of like a mishmash of young and old. A lot of veterans like Braden Shen, Brandon Saad. So I don't know really what they are. I think Broberg really should be in that top 4. If you look at Daily Faceoff's projected lineup right now, he's on the 3rd pair. To me, he should slot on 2nd pair left side defense. But yeah, how about the Edmonton side of things, guys? Does this really leave them vulnerable? We finally looked at this team after this offseason and said, holy, there's a lot of depth there, especially at forward. And even on defense, it was like, okay, you can see how it gets by. I'm really worried about that defensive core now. Like that 3rd pairing is kind of scary. And at forward, there's question marks. I'm not as worried, but what do you guys think about their depth?
I feel like they could have like up front, I think they could afford to lose Holloway. Like I don't think their forward group was really impacted too heavily by losing him. But yeah, I agree with you. I think their defense is, if there is a weak point for a team that just went to the Cup final, I think it's definitely their defense.
I actually don't mind Emberson out. Emberson in exchange for what's his name, Broberg. Emberson looked decent with
Cody
San Jose.
Ceci.
Sorry, yeah, Cody Ceci. Well, you know what I mean. Broberg went out, but as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Emberson looked decent last year with San Jose. Keep in mind, decent on San Jose means probably very good when he's being sheltered on an actual hockey team or a non-AHL team. So I'm excited to see how he does there. But then again, the best way to keep pucks out of your net is to keep the puck in the opposing team zone, and with that offensive core, you're fine.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement there, Bry. They had, I would argue they probably had a weaker D. Like just Cody Ceci alone taking up all that money, it makes it a weaker D core than, like, we saw him for a season in Toronto, and by halfway through the season, we wanted that guy fired out of a cannon. People in Ottawa wanted him fired out of a cannon. Like, I don't know. That guy's not a good. Maybe he'd be fine on like a league min contract, but what's he making right now? Like, whatever he's making is way too much because it's not league minimum. That's what Cody Ceci is. So
That's fair, but honestly, I think I'm taking Cody Ceci. This sounds stupid, but I'm taking Cody Ceci over Ty Emberson and Josh Brown every freaking day. Like I think at least Cody Ceci is an NHL defenseman, and it does sound like he performed better in Edmonton than he did in Toronto and Ottawa. Guys, like Josh Brown, who knows anything about Josh Brown? Like this is a perennial 7th defenseman that they signed, I think, on a 3-year deal, right? Josh Brown, I don't know.
The people
And you
that
put him
did know
together.
him, the people that did know him aren't really fans.
Yeah.
Don't really have a team to support anymore. So I mean, Josh Brown is. You're right. Arguably, admittedly, you are right. But like Brian
and they're going to be playing
said,
together, Josh Brown and Ty Emberson. They don't have a 3rd pair.
yeah. Listen, you're right, but you got to get under the cap. They're 170 grand under right now. That's the cost of doing business, basically, right? You can't keep everybody, especially when their forward core. There's 4 to 5 new pieces on that forward core. Like that is a new look forward lineup, and arguably a much stronger forward core than they had that took them to the Cup Finals last year. And like Brian said, well, I'm not going to sit here and I'm going to say, oh, the Oilers are locked to make it back to the Cup Finals again, maybe potentially win a cup this year. But another year of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl mixed in with what looks to be like a pretty potent offensive core. You probably don't need to stop any pucks. The Oilers almost proved that you really don't need to stop that many pucks in order to get to the finals.
On that note, Brando, do you have anything on Vasily Podkolzin? Because really, that's the insulation that they brought in for Dylan Holloway. I mean, similar story, younger guy who's been up and down, just like Holloway. But I think Holloway at least got a bit more of a foothold at the end of last year and in the playoffs, but Colson is really a question mark. Do you think that he can kind of fill that hole that Holloway leaves?
Yeah, I think at the very least he offers some insulation, like you said, which is why that I don't think they were ever really in danger, or not. Maybe danger is not the right word, but they were never going to, I don't think, match the Holloway sheet. I didn't see that as a possibility, just because they have, as everyone's alluded to, the upfront is their strength, and even in the bottom six, they performed it to a point where they probably are comfortable going forward, especially with the signings that they've made. It's the Broberg one that really puzzled me. I thought they would try to get a little bit more creative than just moving Cody Ceci in order to keep him, because in both cases it leaves them kind of high and dry on both ends, right? Like they're going to rely on young players, hopefully to improve and show something that they haven't seen yet. But I don't know that that's a strong philosophy when you have a team that might be ready to take another, if there is another step forward for the Oilers to take, they're at least in the regular season, they may be able to do that. But defensively, maybe it's in the regular season, we'll see them get creative, but they don't seem able, they would not be, in my opinion, ready to match some of the high powered offenses. At least their defense would not be able to match some of those offenses in the Western Conference right now.
No, that's well said. On Pod Colson, before we move on, there was a report from Bleacher Report Open Ice on Twitter where Pod Colson and his wife were on their way to IKEA to get furniture for the new apartment that they bought in Vancouver when he got news of the trade. That's a tough break for sure. We are not going to IKEA like Vasily Podkolzin, though. We're going to go to Montreal because that's where Patrik Laine is on his way to. Yeah, there was a deal just a couple days ago sending Patrik Laine from Columbus to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Jordan Harris and a second-round pick. No more convoluted trades to attach to this one. That's all of it. So we definitely have to start with Patrik Laine. What do we think about this deal?
I can't believe that the Montreal Canadiens are gonna go from finishing 14th to maybe 11th in the East. Like, cheers, I guess. No, I'm kidding. I think Laine will be good in Montreal. I think he needs a fresh start. But like, as far as team success, I don't think it's a big needle mover. Like, who knows? He could show up and score 30 plus goals. I don't know. I feel like at least at the beginning of the first season, he's gonna need to knock some rust off. But honestly, pretty low return for Columbus. That's like, I was shocked Columbus was okay with what they got back.
So for me,
Oh.
I find
Here
it
you go, Rick.
interesting how the past 3 seasons, Kent Hughes has made a gamble on a younger player that underperformed the season before or got injured. So if you go back, look at this year, Patrik Laine, that was the guy he acquired. Go back the year before, Alex Newhook was the guy he acquired. And then after that, it was Kirby Dach. These are pretty good acquisitions that he is underpaying for, I'd say. And it's scary to me how he's building Montreal into kind of a sleeper team. You look at the team on paper, it looks pretty solid across the board. And taking a chance on Patrik Laine in exchange for Jordan Harris, which I am a fan of, is low risk in regards to the potential output that you can get out of Laine, especially if he wakes up and especially if the centers that Montreal has is able to play with him.
I agree 100%, Bri. I personally, I just think this deal, while I don't think it's like going to be a boom or bust for Montreal, like I don't think there's too much of a downside here. Like unless Jordan Harris quite literally pops off and becomes like a top 4D in Montreal, which I doubt is gonna, like I don't think it's gonna happen. I do think the boomer bust though will be with Patrik Laine. This is a guy who has quite literally not been an NHL player for close to a year. So like Aiden alluded to, he's gonna have to shake some rust off. So what is a realistic first season for Patrik Laine? Like if we're gonna temper our expectations here, it's gonna be 20 to 25 goals. I think that should be a realistic thing for him. We've said it before, he's a one-dimensional scorer. You're not gonna get more out of him than that streaky goal scoring, right? That is what he's known for. But that is something that Montreal needs. You're going to put him behind somebody like Cole Caulfield, who Maybe not in the same vein, but they have similar features, let's say. And he also is going to have playmakers on the team, guys like Kirby Dach, people that can get him the puck. So you kind of throw that into like a big melting pot, and I think a realistic season for Patrik Laine this year, I'm gonna go on a limb. I'm gonna say 25 to 30 goals for him. I'm gonna say 25 goals in between there.
See, with the Canadians, I think it's really creative roster building. And I think if this was NHL 24, these lines might have a +5 or whatever for chemistry based on their, their skill sets. But I don't see a world where, I mean, maybe Laine has a great individual season, but I don't see a world where this move specifically moves them any closer, kind of what Aiden alluded to really becoming a franchise that's going to compete consistently. I think Laine could come in and have a great season, have maybe, he's signed, I think, 2 more years, or maybe longer than that, but he could come in
just
and have
2 years.
This year,
Yeah.
it's this year and next year.
The 2 years, yeah. I think he could come in and do well for that, but like then what? Then they're gonna sign him long term? I don't see that really happening. I don't see him becoming too endeared in Montreal unless something crazy happens and I'm absolutely wrong and maybe they do pop off. But looking at their roster, I think they're trying to put together a team that they think would be competitive in the NHL. But there's something I think missing. Whether that's maybe Slafkovsky will grow and it's that size that I feel like they've been missing, and that dominance kind of down low. But they seem to have a lot of guys that are kind of the same, but can maybe do different things. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But
that's kind of where I'm thinking. That's kind of what I'm thinking, Brandon. I think it's a step in the right direction. Like, you wouldn't say Laine is a superstar, but he's definitely an established guy who's been in the league for a number of years. I think the next move they have to make is on the back end, whether that's defense or goal, because I think their forwards, even before acquiring Laine, I like their forward core. But like the backhand, especially in goalie, I know it's pretty hard to replace Carey Price, but I would have liked to see them address those position groups before trading for Laine.
They do have a bit of a logjam right now though on D. They have somebody like Lane Hudson who's probably going to come in this year, and honestly probably light it up. You think of David Reinbacher as well, who
Logan Mailloux
as well. I think like somebody like David Reinbacher personally, like I don't know. In hindsight's 2020, but oh man,
but that's the thing.
That might be a whiff of a.
All those guys are really good prospects, Dave. But are any of them going to help them in a real, impactful way in the next 2 years? So what's
this year? Probably not.
That's what I'm saying. They need a guy. They need a guy on defense.
This one, I think
they need a dog
player.
They need a dog. Yeah, they need a dog. Sorry, they need a dog right now. They just have a bunch of guys.
Yeah. Lots of pups on that team, actually.
Cheers, Arbor, but you're not moving the needle, pal.
I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth here, because Brian, off the top, you brought up the Kirby Dach trade and like the Alex Newhook trade, and my rebuttal to that would be like, what has that done for them? What have Alex Newhook and Kirby Dach done? Kirby Dach looks great when he's there, and guess what? He hasn't been there very often. A ton of injuries for him. Alex Newhook last year only had 34 points, 15 goals, 34 points. I'm a big Alex Newhook fan. I loved him in his draft year. I saw all that speed and I saw him go to Colorado. I'm like, oh my God, they got mini Nathan McKinnon. What the hell? We haven't seen that turn out in reality. With that being said, though, on the whole of like Kent Hughes' tenure, I do think he's made a bunch of small good moves here and there, and they're going to add up over time. And it's going to take a while, but they're going to eventually get there, as much as it pains me to say. Like, they are making consistently good moves. Every time I see a Montreal signing or trade, I say, God damn it. Even if it's by the slightest bit, I say, God damn it. And I do think that this kind of lends itself to that. Maybe it is. I know what you're saying, Brandon, that really it's like, is Laine fit their timeline? Probably not, unless they're looking to compete next year. which there's a slight chance of that. I don't think that's totally out of the question. I think
No,
this
you're
year they're
never
still
out.
like, yeah, they're never out of it, but
The
there's
only
a
the
chance
only
that Laine could
problem
help them. Yeah.
the only problem with that scenario is they need to literally jump 6 teams, and all 6 of those teams are in a position or on their way up from a position. Like you look at the Atlantic right now, who's going to be falling out within the next couple of years? Like Toronto seems to be pretty locked into where they are. Tampa Bay, Florida
I would
seems to
say
be pretty
Tampa's
locked.
the. I think
Tampa might be
Tampa's.
falling, but you also
Yeah.
have two other teams that they have to compete with who are also trying to make their way up in Buffalo, Detroit, and potentially Ottawa. Like, all
Yeah.
three, all
But what
7 teams
separates
in,
any of those 4 teams right now? I don't think anything separates Montreal, Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo. Nothing.
does 25 goals from Patrik Laine separate them?
No, I don't think
know.
he's not the difference, but I
Yeah.
think just the cumulative aspect of all the moves that Montreal's been making could get them there. It could get any of the other teams there as well.
Well, I think between those. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Oh no, you go first. I was gonna kind of change it up a bit.
I was just gonna say, I think between the 3 or 4 teams that you mentioned, Christian, I think because of the moves that they're making, Montreal and Buffalo are the 2 teams that are doing the most to try to push themselves up, whereas Ottawa and Detroit seem to be relying on internal growth. And some of that is cap and some of that is just the way that some organizations work. But Kent Hughes, like you said, is one of those guys that's not willing to just sit and wait, obviously, which is good quality to have.
Yeah, and I respect that. I may be a little bit jealous of it. Cough, cough, Toronto. But yeah,
So,
Brian, what do you got?
I just wanted to bring up power play situation. They could have a lethal power play next year just based off just look at the way that they probably line up. Suzuki plays front post, like in front of the net on the power play, from what I understand, and he shoots right, so he would go there. Now, I guess Laine could sit on the wall in the Ovechkin spot. Caulfield on point. Matheson could be I don't know, beside
He runs the
Caulfield, and then
point. Yeah.
and then Slavkovsky could also play on the wall, like
Who's
moving
the
but
playmaker on that line?
But this is what I was going to bring up. Cole Hudson's coming up. He had an unbelievable season at the University of Massachusetts. He had like 35 assists in like 30 games or 30 something games, which is really, really good. And the way he just walks the line shows that he could probably do it. I think they're onto something with this power play situation, at least. It'll be interesting to see if it actually pans out, but we'll see when the season starts. And
I think they could use a more pure playmaker, but yeah.
I also just wanted to say, Kent Hughes reignited the Laine Matthews rivalry 8 years later, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I joked about that. I'm like, I can't wait to see the feature on intermission of HockeyNet in Canada, Toronto versus Montreal.
Let's keep bringing up that after a Calder and a Hart and 3 Rocket Richard trophies. But
who do you think hates that being brought up more? Matthews?
Probably Laine. It's got to be Laine.
It has to be Laine. Yeah. Although he seems like he doesn't really care about anything, but Matthews is kind of the same.
I would, if I was him,
plot,
I'd hate
so
him.
I would say Laine for sure. Yeah.
I know we didn't talk. Yeah. I realized we didn't really talk much about the Columbus side of things, but it doesn't really change much for them. So there's not really too much to go over there.
Who cares?
Yeah. Jordan Harris is going to get
Columbus.
minutes. That's
the moral of the story. Like that's
going to get
somebody brought up that they didn't get much in Harris, I guess, but it makes me think that nobody else wanted him. Like there was nothing else on the
Harris
table.
Or Laine?
Laine, sorry. Yeah. So maybe that's all they could get. They needed to get out from under him.
Brandon, $8.7 million for the next 2 years on a guy who, but besides the going into the player assistance program, has also been injured over the past 3 years, and it hasn't been like a couple of games. It's been months that he's missed. He is right now damaged goods for all intents and purposes. That is what he is. That's Laine at his absolute bottom barrel thing. And the fact that Columbus was actually able to get an NHL roster, like a player out of it, for me, while it might not be the most flashy name, it's something. It's something for Don Waddell to work with.
Yeah, it's a reclamation project for sure. Definitely, like on a personal note, I will be cheering for Patrik Laine, the person and the individual player. Maybe not his team on a whole, but
maybe not when they play the Leafs. But
yeah, exactly. Like I remember Laine when he entered the league. Like he was a different personality. He would kind of just speak his mind, and it was refreshing. And we've gotten less and less of that. So hopefully he can return to giving us on the ice action, but maybe some off the ice fun as well. Let's spend 5 minutes on our last topic here. Yaroslav Askarov of the Nashville Predators. We now have reports that he is officially asked for a trade out of Nashville. We first got a report from Kevin Weeks on Twitter, and he basically said that he will not report to the Milwaukee Admirals if he gets assigned to there at the start of the season. We then got some reports from local reporters in Nashville. First, Michael Gallagher. He had this to say: Barry Trotz was prepared for a trade request the moment he offered UC Saros an 8-year contract. From conversations I've had, the sense I get is Trotz and Askarov just clash too much personality-wise for Trotz to commit to him anything other than taking it year by year. Michael Gallagher also says that the two teams he's heard to keep an eye on regarding Askarov are Carolina and San Jose. And then another local reporter, John Glennon, he posted a statement from the Predators, from Barry Trotz, who said, "We are aware of the report today, and our expectation is for the player to report to training camp and compete for a job in September." So conflicting, not reports, because we have an official statement from the team, and then we have the insider information. I'm definitely more tempted to go with what the reporters are saying here. It feels like the writing's been on the wall, and this is going to end via trade. And that's just Trotz saving face right now, saying, "Hey, he's going to show up and he's going to be a hockey player for us." Yeah, what do you think about this long saga? Is it finally going to come to an end sometime soon?
If you're Mike Greer, you are salivating at the mouth right now. I heard, okay, so you brought up those two teams in Carolina and San Jose, and my first thought was, I don't know if he really fits Carolina's timeline currently. Like, they want to win right now. I don't know if you can win right now with Yaroslav Askarov currently, just because he's never played NHL games. Like, I don't know if you could just throw him into that situation. But if you're San Jose right now, you're not expected to win, at least for the next few years. While maybe you're going to have to shelter him a little bit. Maybe he comes in and he's not the greatest to start. Man, you put him alongside Macklin, Celebrini, Will Smith, and their treasure trove of picks and prospects that they have coming up. That could be a very, very scary team in the next 5 years.
If they make that move, we will no longer refer to San Jose as Alcatraz.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I'm cheering against that move. Then we need more Alcatraz.
Yeah, maybe don't make that trade.
Well, we could move Alcatraz to like Anaheim or something.
Yeah.
Well, Christian, I honestly didn't read that tweet until you read it out. But while you were like going over Askarov, I was thinking like, oh yeah, I knew this was going to happen as soon as they extended Saros. So I guess he views himself as like he's ready to start, I'd say, or at least be on an NHL roster. So for him, I think it's the right move, like career wise. Yeah, and I think it's like there's some trades you just can't avoid, and they have obviously committed to Saros, so I think you have to try to get what you can for, arguably. Would you guys say he's the best goalie prospect right now?
He's
Maybe
top three
Jacob
for
Fowler.
sure.
Maybe,
Yeah, and that's
sure.
a Montreal guy, but he's top three 100%. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if the UC Saros signing, like this is what would make me decide if I want to side with Barry Trotz or Askarov on this situation. Does Askarov think that he should be starting, or does Askarov think he should be in the NHL? Those are two different things. And signing UC Saros didn't prevent him from being in the NHL this year. It was actually signing Scott Wedgwood as the backup. That's who's blocking him from NHL time right now. I think if you're Askarov and Barry Trotz comes to you and says, "We want you to be our backup to UC Saros this year in your first season in the NHL, you'll get to soak up all the experience from Saros, and then we can go from there," you're in on that. But that's obviously not what happened. Barry Trotz got Scott Wedgwood. He's got his 1-2 already figured out. Askarov is the 3. So from the outside looking in, I get Askarov's point. Like, hey, I was ready to go. Why did you sign a backup? So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'll be curious to see if there's other teams we hear that are interested. Brando, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that Carolina and San Jose are really good options, but I think they're both just not. It's just almost if this was next year for San Jose, I think that would be like the perfect time to maybe start making that jump. But I don't know if they're ready yet or to commit to a young goalie like that and make him the starter maybe, but and give up something of value. But I don't know. It's the Wedgwood thing, Christian, like you said, is the big one because everyone's asking about Saros. It's Saros. Everyone knows it's Saros, but Wedgwood did not have to technically be there. And you could have brought in a goalie that of not Wedgwood is a good NHL goalie, and I think maybe that's why they're doing that is
He's
to
a good
try
backup. He's a
ensure-
solid backup.
Probably the best
Yeah.
of the UFA backups, I would say.
I like
But
him.
you would,
I like him.
but to your point, you would think that you have Askarov play the backup position, have him do really well, and at the very least, he increases his trade value, and that's kind of
Yeah.
that would be my business plan moving forward. But to just kind of first alienate him and then put him in a position where he can't really help you increase his value. What's he gonna do? Go play well in the American Hockey League? He's probably
Unless he
already
thinks
done that, right?
unless he thinks he can
has
just
been there,
start.
done that.
Yeah.
Unless
So
he just like that's what it is. Unless he just thinks that
Yeah.
he could start on a team and it's just not going to be Nashville. Basically, that's
In
probably
which
the
case,
guess.
if you're Barry, it's like, all right, let's get you out of here. Like that would be my approach. It's like you think you're going to start over UC Saros right now? You're nuts, right? So I don't know. With Carolina, I'm thinking like they've got 2 defense prospects that you can maybe do a 1-for-1 swap with Askarov. There's Nikita Nikishin, who's coming over this year, and Scott Morrow. They're 2 pretty high-end defense prospects. They both might play games with Carolina this year. If I'm trying to think of like another team that I could
Philly.
see making sense, Philly, I guess, yeah, they need a goalie, but they're also like really early in the timeline. The one that jumped to me was Seattle. Like, I don't know if
Seattle's
Shane
a
Wright
good
is the
one.
name, but they need a goalie too.
Seattle's
But-
a really good one.
Before we
Yeah.
close off, I don't like trading within my my conference, especially goalies. And I feel like the Philly fit works the best just because of the fact that it's 2 GMs that want to make home run moves, and Denny Briere has shown
Yeah.
that he's willing to do
2 of
that.
my
And
favorites.
those trots.
Yeah. That's fair.
All right,
All
Christian,
right, that's
close
all
it
the
off.
time we got. We'll get to the Leafs next episode. Thanks so much for watching. Shout out to Fubo. Shout out to NHL Shop. And yeah, we'll see you next episode.
Sweet.
Bang.